Hi everyone, it's Erin from the Provincial Farmhouse. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing some French country thrift flips for the kitchen. Our first project is this lovely little canister set. It has some really sweet jars and a wonderful little caddy that they sit in. I felt like it was great, but it needed a refresh. My first step is to remove the little gum nuts that were attached to it. So I've used my heat gun to reactivate the glue. I'm also using a flathead screwdriver to scrape off the glue. And I'm also using a Goo Gone product that helps get rid of sticky substances. I'm going to clean all of the canisters really well. After cleaning the caddy, I'm going to give it 2 coats of Dixie Belle's Drop Cloth Chalk Mineral Paint. This is a lovely antique white. I'm going to paint the entire caddy, being really careful to pick it up and look at it from different angles to make sure that I have everything covered. There was a lot of areas that were a little bit tricky to see, so I just really made sure that I got good coverage over the entire thing. And it's only going to take 2 coats to get the coverage that I need today. You can find a full product list in the description of this video below, and all of these products on our website, theprovincialfarmhouse.com.au. While my paint is drying, I'm going to move on to the canister lids. I got these sweet little birds from Temu. They came in a pack of 8 for just a few dollars. I'm going to use some Gorilla Super Glue gel on the bottom of the bird and also on the center of the canister lid, and I'm going to attach it to the top. I felt like this was a really sweet little detail and the scale of the birds was perfect. I'm going to clean off all the excess super glue, and then I'm going to come in once that's dry and I'm going to paint the entire canister lid the same color, that wonderful drop cloth tone, and that way then it will look more cohesive. It will look like the little bird is meant to be on there, and that glue is really strong, so people could actually use the little bird to help pull the canister lid off. I'm going to make sure that I only get it on the lid of the canister so that these will still be food safe. I'm not going to get any paint anywhere else. I'm going to repeat the same process on all of the canister lids. Next, I'm going to take some 220 grit sandpaper and I'm going to go around the edges of the little wooden caddy that we painted, and I'm going to distress it. I want this to have a vintage worn feel, so I'm just going to lightly distress the entire thing. And then I'm also going to go around the edges of our little canister lids, around the circular lid, and I'm going to give that a light distress as well. To seal this, I'm going to be using Dixie Belle's Best Dang Wax in Clear. I'm going to apply it to the whole caddy, and then I'm going to buff it with a microfiber cloth. And then I'm also going to repeat the same process on our little canister lids, adding the clear wax and then buffing the excess off with a cloth. Finally, I decided that I wanted to bring out the details of the little bird, so I have a small artist's brush with some of Dixie Belle's Best Dang Wax in brown, and I'm working it into the details of the little bird, and then I'm rubbing off the excess with a cloth. I'll repeat the same process for each of the canister lids. And here's our finished canister set. I'm really happy with how this turned out. I feel like they were quite plain before, but now with those little birds on top, they just have that something special about them. I think these could be used in any room of the house, really. Let me know what you think of this project in the comments. Our next project is this little metal tray that I found at the thrift store. It's nothing special. It's actually pressed metal, I believe. I've already sprayed this with Rustoleum's Clear Matte Sealer, and now I'm going to give it 2 coats of Dixie Belle's Drop Cloth Chalk Mineral Paint. I'm going to paint the entire top of the tray, and that will be enough coverage for what we're wanting to achieve today. I may have a few people that are angry that I painted this, but please don't be. This was a made in China piece. It was not an heirloom, and honestly, we're going to give it new life today. Once my paint is dry, I'm going to cut out this design from IOD's Brocante Transfer. It's a beautiful rose design. I'm just seeing how it's going to fit in the tray, and then I'm trimming off some text that's going to go with it as well. I like to break my transfers down into sections to make it a little bit easier. I'm also going to trim off some of the excess space around the outside of the design so it's easier to work the transfer into the tray. I'll then remove the backing carefully from my transfer, hover it over the position where I want it to go, and then carefully press down. I have my transfer stick and I'm working the transfer onto my surface, rubbing down, especially focusing first on the areas that go up on the curve edge of the tray. So I'm making sure that those are down. I'm then doing a bit of a rub over the entire transfer, and then I will pick a corner, lift that plastic up, and start rubbing as I go. I'm pulling that plastic up as I rub to make sure that the transfer has released. If I come across an area that has not released properly, I'll put it back down and I will continue to rub that design down. These are very easy to use, and it's a very easy way to add something special to your home decor projects. Once I have the design rubbed down, I'm going to take a piece of the carrier sheet and burnish the design further, making sure that it's all stuck down properly. I'm then going to trim off some of the text so that I can arrange it the way I want, and repeat the same process, rubbing the design down. With text, I definitely recommend that you take your time, as it has lots of little parts and you don't want to accidentally miss a section. To give this more of a vintage feel, I took some 220 grit sandpaper and I lightly distressed the transfer. I'm only doing this a little bit. I just want to give it a little bit of a vintage feel. I'm then wiping off the excess dust, and then I'm going to seal the entire tray with Dixie Belle's Best Dang Wax in Clear. I'll then buff that with a microfiber cloth. To frame this out, I'm going to use some of Dixie Belle's Best Dang Wax in Brown, and I'm working it into the border of the tray. I'm particularly paying attention to the area on the handles. I really love that rose and the swirls that are there, but I'm going to work my way around the entire tray, adding that brown wax and then wiping it back. I feel like this creates a lovely frame to really highlight the beauty of that design in the center. I also grabbed my wax brush and rubbed a little bit of excess wax onto the interior to create a bit more of a border, and then I buffed off the excess. And here's our finished tray. I'm really happy with how this turned out. That transfer is absolutely stunning, and I feel like this could be used as an artwork, hanging on a wall, leaning on a shelf, as well as a functional piece on a coffee table. Let me know what you think of this project in the comments. Our final project today is this vintage salt box that I found at the thrift store. It's ceramic, but it was missing the lid that should go on there, and it had a lot of stains on it. So we're going to give it a makeover and a completely new function. After sealing this with Rustoleum's Clear Matte Sealer, I'm going to give this piece 2 coats of Dixie Belle's Drop Cloth Chalk Mineral Paint. I'm going to paint the entire thing. This will hide some of those stains that I wasn't able to scrub out, and it will just give it a fresher feel. I had a few different visions in mind for this piece. I felt like it could be used as a planter. It would look really sweet with some faux flowers or greenery in it, but I also felt like it could be just a sweet little storage container for the kitchen bench with some spoons or some tea towels in it. I felt like it could really be a bit of a multi-purpose piece, so we're going to give this new life. I hope you guys aren't too mad that I'm painting over it. Honestly, it was missing a lot of the original design. It had been worn off, and in the base I scrubbed really hard. I could not get those stains out, so we're going to give this a new purpose today. Like a lot of other projects, this sort of took on a life of its own. I decided after I'd finished painting that I wanted to add some of the sweet little birds that we used in the first project, but it's best to glue onto the original surface. So I'm going to wipe off a little bit of that paint. It's still not completely dry, so I was able to do this easily. And then I'm going to be adding some of that Gorilla Super Glue Gel to the bottom of those little birds and also to the surface of our project. It really is best to add this directly to the surface as opposed to the paint because you may not get the best adhesion if you don't do this. So I've added a little bit of glue to both the bird and my surface, and I've pressed down carefully and I'm wiping off the excess glue. I'll then repeat the same process for the other two birds that we're going to add on the right hand side. While the glue is setting for my little birds, I'm going to give the rest of our piece another coat of Dixie Belle's Drop Cloth Chalk Mineral Paint. The glue that I'm using sets pretty fast, but I just thought I'd give it just an extra couple of minutes and paint those last, just to make sure that they were stuck down really well. Just like with our first project, once you add that same base color paint to these little birds, they really tie together beautifully. It looks more like a cohesive piece, like those birds have always been on there. And I actually really love how the paint highlights the details of the birds. Sometimes I feel like dark colors or colors in general can sometimes hide details, whereas white paint tends to highlight those beautiful carvings. So each of these sweet little birds is going to get 2 coats of that same drop cloth paint. I just love any decor that features sweet little birds. I feel like they are very French country, but if this is not to your style, you could definitely leave out adding the little birds, or maybe you could add something different instead. Once my paint dried, I sealed the entire piece with Dixie Belle's Gloss Clear Coat. This gloss clear coat will not only protect the paint, but it will be a great base for our next step. Next, I'm going to be using IOD's new Reverie stamps. I have not used these yet, so I'm going to take them out of the packet, and then I'm going to be using some 220 grit sandpaper to lightly scuff the stamps. This is a step that you only need to do once. It's called conditioning your stamps. It helps them take ink and paint a bit better. You can see I'm swiping down one side and then I will change directions. I'm going to do this to both of the stamps in this pack. I wanted to add a delicate design to the front of our piece here, so I'm just having a look at the different stamp sets and working out what might work. I felt that this rose design would be perfect, so I'm placing it on a clear mount and I'm going to add some of IOD's permanent black ink. I'm only going to add it to the bottom design. I'm going to wipe off the excess ink from the extra little rose stem that they've got up the top, and then I'm going to get my piece ready for stamping. I'm going to rest it back on a pack of wet wipes that I have. I'm going to position the stamp over where I want it to go and then carefully press down. As I was doing this, I realized I probably didn't need to have it on the thin mount. It did restrict my ability to stamp in some of the grooves, so I took it off the thin mount and carefully pressed in the areas where I had missed. But this does not have to be perfect. I am actually about to come in now with a wet wipe and wipe off some of that ink. I want this to have more of a faded design. Next, I'm going to grab that same stamp again. I'm going to ink it up and I'm going to wipe off some of the excess from down the bottom and up the top a little bit. And I'm going to position this next to the stamp we've already done, but just a little bit lower. Again, I'm going to use that wet wipe to wipe back some of the excess to give it more of a faded look. I then used one of the smaller rose stem designs and I'm inking that up, and I'm going to position that to the left of our design. There's not really a right or wrong way to position these. I just went with whatever felt balanced. With regards to being able to wipe back the inks, it's important that you are adding them to a surface that's already sealed to be able to do this, otherwise the ink will sink in too quickly. I'd also add that I've only used this with IOD ink. I don't know how other inks will perform, if they will do the same thing. So I would suggest doing it on a piece of scrap wood first to try it out to see what kind of result you're going to get before adding it to a project that you're working on. If you don't have access to the Reverie stamp that I'm using today, you could use one of IOD's other stamps like the Sprigs stamp to do something similar, or you could perhaps do some stenciling or maybe even add some decoupage paper instead. If this faded look isn't for you, you could just skip this part and not wipe the ink back. When my ink was completely dry, I came in and added some of Dixie Belle's Grunge Glaze to the entire piece. You can see I'm adding it with a chip brush, and then I'm using a wet wipe to wipe off some of the excess. This is going to give it an antiqued look. It's not a super dark brown, it's very subtle. It actually looks blue while you're putting it on, but it dries a lovely soft brown. I'm going to add it to the entire piece to give it a vintage feel. I'm going to be paying particular attention to the sweet little birds that we added. I'm going to work that glaze into the details, especially their feathers, for example, and this glaze is really going to highlight those lovely details. Now, if you don't have access to glaze, you could create a paint wash with a brown paint perhaps, or you could use an antiquing wax instead. If the aged finish isn't to your taste, you could just leave this step out. The final touch is to add some of Dixie Belle's gold gilding wax. I've just got a little bit on my finger, and I'm going to hit some of the edges on our piece today. And then I'm also going to add just a little hint of gold to those sweet little birds. I'm not using much. I just want this to look like it's gold gilding that's worn off over time. If gold gilding wax isn't your thing, you could always use a different colored gilding wax, or you could just leave this step out. And here's a look at the finished project. I love how this turned out. I think adding those little birds has really taken this to a new level. I think it works as a planter, and I think it would also work as a container on a kitchen bench with some tea towels or a wooden spoon in it. Let me know what you think of this project in the comments. I really hope that you have enjoyed today's projects and that it's maybe inspired you to take a look at the decor you have in your kitchen, and maybe you can give it a makeover as well. Let me know if you have a favorite project from today's video. If you enjoyed today's video, I would really appreciate it if you would hit that like button, comment, and share it out to a friend that you think might enjoy it. If you haven't already, I would love it if you could hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of our videos. You can find the products used today on our website, theprovincialfarmhouse.com.au. Thanks for watching.